Hi guys, this is Krista Smith. I'm the author that's going to be at your school later this spring, and I just wanted to come by and say hello and introduce myself. So, hi guys, it's nice to meet you all. What I'm going to do is share a story with you that I wrote that I think you're going to like, and then I'm going to tell you why I wrote the story. So, do any of you like dogs or have dogs at home? Well, I do, and my story is called Once Upon a Poodle. And I'm going to read it to you right now. So it starts out with this guy sitting up here, and his name is Woody. And it says, one afternoon, a little poodle named Woody sat upon the sofa and watched the world from the window. He saw birds flying through the sky. He saw squirrels climbing up trees. He saw rabbits hopping, and he saw groups of dogs running and playing together. And of course, Woody's looking outside at the dogs, and he's not too happy that he's inside, stuck on that couch. So let's find out what happens to him. His mom, that's Mrs. Flout, played games with him, games like hide the bone, but she wasn't very good at it. When Woody hid the bone in her slipper, she looked under the pillow. When he hid it under the pillow, she looked inside her slipper. Woody loved his mom as much as a poodle could, but what he really wanted was a brother. Someone who could play hide the bone just a little bit better, someone to keep him company when Mrs. Flout was busy, and someone who could be part of their family. And you can see Mrs. Flout is looking at her slipper when we know the bone is sitting right there. So here's what Woody does. One day, Woody got to thinking that if he wanted to solve his problem, he needed to be on the other side of the window. He needed to be where everyone else seemed to be. So while his mom, Mrs. Flout, was busy taking a bubble bath, Woody popped out through the dog door where he met a fella with a long neck and feathers. What do you think that's going to be? Let's find out. They sniffed each other, and the mysterious creature shook his tail feathers. Woody was sure that meant he wanted to play. So Woody chased him all the way up the path, through the dog door, and into the house. Could this be the one, Woody thought? Could this be my new brother? So he threw over one of his bouncy balls, but the creature just stood there and flapped his wings. So Woody threw a stuffed bird to him, and he let out a screeching squawk. The winged creature took off, flying through the Flout house, down the hall, and straight into the bathroom. Uh-oh. Plop! He landed straight in the bathtub, face to face with Mrs. Flout. Oh my, said Mrs. Flout. Where in the world did you come from? We must return you to where you belong. You need to be near water, but not in my tub. And of course, Mrs. Flout has poodle everything. She has poodle hair, and she even has poodle shampoo. So is poodle stuff everywhere. Well, of course, the goose couldn't stay. So Woody was very sad. And the next day he went back to the sofa and he watched the world through the window again. This time, Mrs. Flout was busy baking peanut butter bones. So Woody popped out through the dog door and ran into a furry gray fellow with a bushy tail. And we can see him right there. So you guys see them climbing up trees and gathering nuts, right? A squirrel. So let's see what happens with this guy. He was chewing on a big nut and threw one towards Woody. Woody thought, this guy likes to play fetch. So Woody and his friend threw the nut back and forth as they went up the path, through the dog door, and into the house. Could this be the one, Woody wondered? Could this be my new brother? What do you think? I don't know. Let's find out. So Woody threw over a stuffed squirrel toy that looked just like this fellow. He let out a few squeaks that sounded like fighting birds. Then he jumped up on the kitchen table, ran across the counter. Look at the look on this guy's face. And leaped straight into Mrs. Flout's pile of nuts. Oh, my. And, of course, Mrs. Flout didn't like that too much. Oh, my, said Mrs. Flout. Where in the world did you come from? We must return you to where you belong. You need to gather nuts, just not from my kitchen. Okay? And there's Woody looking on, right, as the squirrel is going crazy in their kitchen. So I don't think that's going to work too well either as a new brother. So Woody, where did he go? He went back to the sofa and he watched the world through the window again. This time, Mrs. Flat was in the garden. Woody popped out of the dog door and ran into a floppy-eared guy with a small white tail. So we have a bunny, right? Woody threw him a little blueberry buried beneath some leaves. The floppy-eared guy sent it back with his nose. So Woody thought he wanted to play. Could this be the one, Woody thought? Could this be my new brother? What do you think? You think the rabbit could? Well, let's find out. Woody led the little fellow up the path to the dog door. But when Woody got inside, there was no sign of the floppy-eared guy. So he went back outside and found his new friend chewing through a pile of carrots as Mrs. Flout picked them. Oh, no. Mrs. Flout's going and picking them? Uh-oh. You might hear a poodle. And the rabbit's going along eating them. So Mrs. Flout isn't going to like that too much either. Oh my, yelled Mrs. Flout. Where in the world did you come from? We must return you to where you can hop and find your favorite food, but not in my garden. And there she is with the rabbit and Woody once again looking on. Woody was sad that this floppy-eared guy couldn't stay. So the next day he went back to his sofa and watched the world through the window again. Mrs. Flat was busy bringing in packages from the car. Woody popped out through the dog door and down the path. But this time something was different. A curly-haired black creature with 4 legs and a tail came running toward him. He chased Woody through the dog door and into the house. And we can see here we have another what? We have another poodle, right? Okay, so Woody's excited this time. When Woody threw his furry dog toy, the creature brought it back. When Woody hit his bone, the creature sniffed it out. Could this be the one, Woody wondered? Could this be my new brother? What do you think? Of course it is, right? Mrs. Flat came in and said to the little pup, I see you have a name tag, Archie, from the local animal shelter. You might need a good home. Would you like to stay and play a while? Mrs. Flat called the shelter and was told Archie had escaped through a hole in the fence. They were glad he was safe and asked if she could bring him back. Oh my, must we return him? He seems like he's where he belongs as part of our family. We would like to adopt him. Woody barked with joy and thought, this is the one, my new brother. Archie was lively, jumpy, and cute, so he followed Woody to the sofa. But instead of watching the world through the window, Woody watched his new brother, Archie, grab a bone and hide it somewhere. Woody and Archie spent the next 2 hours playing hide the bone, and Archie was much better at it than Mrs. Flout. Mrs. Flout smiled at the 2 boys, then she went over and she locked that dog door. And that's the end of the story. I hope you enjoyed it. And I want to tell you why I wrote the book. And you might have guessed it while I was reading. You heard something happening in the background in my house. Well, it's because I have a couple of poodles. And Woody looks like this in my stories. Archie looks like this. They were both my pets. And Mrs. Flout looks like this. And of course, she's supposed to be me, but only a little older and whiter, right? Okay, I think so. So I hope you guys like the story. I'm going to be at your school later in the spring when it gets a little nicer out, hopefully. And I want to thank you guys for inviting me to the school. I hope you like the story. And I'll see you soon. Bye.